Say yes, and you'll make me happy, Dad. Dad leaned down and kissed his daughter. Then he asked, half teasingly, "And what if I say no? Won't I still be special?" Kathy blushed, then giggled. "Well, of course you'll still be special, but maybe it's because you're so nice and don't like to say no to your own little girl that I love you so much." To my little girl as tall as her mom? "Do you know, kiddo, I've often thought it might be better for you if I said no more often. I couldn't love you more, but I worry I might love you more wisely. $125 for a new fancy dress. Think carefully about it and tell me if it seems like a good idea to you." Kathy thought hard for a moment. Then she answered, "Yes, overall, I think it will be a smart choice. You see, I'll be going out a lot now, and I can do many different things with a nice silk dress. If I got a cheaper fabric, it wouldn't last long." Dad smiled. "Well, if you're really sure you're correct, I'll bring the money home at lunchtime, and you and Mom can start looking for that lovely blue dress." Yellow. Kathy covered her ears with her hands. "Why would you think I'd want a terrible yellow dress?" "Oh, did you say you wanted red? Even worse. You're talking nonsense. My dress is supposed to be blue, soft and shiny like a summer sky, and I'll look amazing in it. Well, you'll see on Christmas Eve." Then, with several goodbye kisses, Kathy's dad, happy, laid back, and too lenient, went off to downtown, and Kathy happily went to the sewing room to tell her mom about her success. Kathy Mason, at 16, was a bright, sweet, and charming girl who could easily tempt any parent to spoil her a bit. She had soft, sunny, yellow hair, lovely dark brown eyes that seemed to say, "Please be kind to me," a delicate, flower-like face, and a mouth as red as fair Rosamond's, a figure that moved gracefully, and a clear, fresh voice. She also had a good heart, even though she didn't always realize it. She loved beauty in books, nature, human faces, and blue silk dresses. Being a picture, in any way she looked or moved, came naturally to Kathy. As Kathy skipped along, she hummed a verse of a cheerful French song where a lover compared his love to a rose, and you could easily imagine it being about Kathy herself, except Kathy didn't have any thorns. As she got closer to the sewing room, she stopped because her mom and the dressmaker were talking busily. Miss Atkinson was a sad little woman, with eyes that looked like they had been drained of color by many tears, a thin body, and a voice that wasn't complaining, but just sounded sad. Kathy felt bad interrupting the sadness of their conversation with her excitement about her blue silk dress, so she leaned against the door for a moment and waited. "You see," the little woman was saying, "it was hard for me when I was sick for 2 months in the summer, and then my brother got even worse. But things will get better somehow. If I can get Alice some clothes so she can go to school, I'll be grateful. She's a smart kid, and it's a shame to see her wasting her time. But we have to take care of food and warmth first, and when people are sick, they're sick, and there's only so much 2 hands can do." There wasn't much to say in response to this acceptance of tough luck, so Kathy's mom just sympathized, saying it was tough, and it seemed like Miss Atkinson already had enough to deal with, supporting her sister and her sister's kid, without taking on any more responsibilities for her sick brother and his family. "Oh, but if I don't do it, there's no one else who can," said the little dressmaker, almost cheerful as she could sound, anyway. But Kathy noticed that a moment later, she put her hand on her side and took a sharp, deep breath. "Does your side hurt, Miss Atkinson?" she asked, kindly. "Not much more than usual. It's pretty bad most days. The doctor said I went back to work too soon after I was sick. But he didn't tell me how we'd manage to live if I took more time off. And, goodness, I'm just grateful to be able to work at all." Kathy felt ashamed that this poor woman, who had to provide for 2 people besides herself, and who knows how many more, partly, had to work on her fancy blue silk dress. Clearly, someone else must have made it, and she couldn't even talk to her mom about it right now. So she just asked for some work and sat down to do it, thinking more seriously than she had ever thought before in her cheerful, carefree life. "How old is your niece, Alice?" she asked after a while. "She's 10, and she's studying as much as many 12-year-old girls. I wanted to send her to school and prepare her to be a teacher, but it doesn't seem possible now that William's so sick. I think I'll have to clothe his 3 kids as well as Alice." "Can't your sister, Alice's mom, help at all?" "Well, she does what she can and more. She takes care of the house, cooks, washes, fixes our things after I fit them, and keeps us patched up. But she can't earn any money. I'm sorry for bringing up my troubles. It's against my principles to bother people with them. But I'm a bit nervous today because Alice cried a lot this morning when she didn't have anything to wear to school." When Papa Mason came home for dinner, he took Kathy aside and jokingly showed her the check. It was for $125, and they had 3 weeks until Christmas Eve to make her blue silk dress. While eating her roast beef, Kathy started thinking again. One question kept bothering her. Why do some people have fancy dresses while others have nothing? She thought everyone must have wondered this at some point. Since God made and loves us all, why should some be like Queen Victoria while others, like little Alice, can't even go to school because they don't have clothes? Kathy didn't know the fancy explanations from economists, so she puzzled over it. What if it's to give us a chance to help each other? She wondered. Then she remembered a sermon she once heard, "Help each other with your problems." If everyone had the same, there'd be no chance for helping, giving, or sacrificing. Maybe fancy clothes come at the expense of being kinder to others. Kathy believed God knows best. If we couldn't believe that, the world might as well fall apart. "Would you like some pudding, dear?" "I've asked you 3 times already," said Mrs. Mason, her voice a bit more energetic. Kathy looked up from her thoughts with a bit of confusion in her eyes and answered, "125, which made everyone laugh. I can't give you 125 puddings, but if you start with this one, I'm sure more will come before the year ends, Mrs. Mason replied. So Kathy snapped out of her daydreams, ate her pudding, and asked for more with a healthy appetite. That afternoon, she sewed diligently and didn't talk much, but her eyes sparkled with some exciting thoughts. After tea, when Miss Atkinson had left and Papa had gone to see a friend, Kathy sat down on a low stool beside her mother, as she often did, and rested her head in her lap. Mrs. Mason knew that Kathy would share all her afternoon thoughts before she got up again, so she just stroked Kathy's fluffy, yellow hair and waited. Don't you think, Mom, that Miss Atkinson must be a much better than us? She carries her burdens so patiently. She never seems to complain about how hard she works or that she can't get what she wants. All she worries about is not being able to do what she planned for Alice. Then, after Mrs. Mason gave a brief response, there was silence for a while. Then Kathy burst out impulsively, "Mom, I feel like such a useless person. I've never helped anyone in my life. I've just been a burden on someone else." "You're not a burden at all," Mrs. Mason laughed. "Your father and I have actually enjoyed taking care of you." Kathy lovingly kissed the hand that had been stroking her hair, but she was too serious to laugh. "Well, Mom, you know the rule isn't help each other with your problems, except Kathy. I think it applies to me just like anyone else. I won't feel right until I start helping. I want to help Alice." Kathy was speaking quickly now, her cheeks flushed and her brown eyes shining. "You see, I figured it all out this afternoon. If Miss Atkinson will provide food and shelter, I think I could take care of Alice's clothes until she finishes school and is ready to teach. And don't you think I'll feel better when I'm older, knowing I've done something for someone? It would be easy for me. I could give her my dresses, coats, and hats. We wouldn't need to buy much, just boots, socks, and underwear. And wouldn't that use up a lot of your pocket money? I'm not trying to discourage you, dear. I just want you to think it over carefully. Once you start this, Miss Atkinson and Alice will depend on you, and you can't stop." "Yes, I've thought about it. Didn't you see me figuring it out in my head this afternoon, like a math problem? I think using half of the money Dad gives me for lunches, presents, and other things would be just fine. I'm sure I could support Alice well with half of it once I get her started. That's what I want to talk to you about. Dad gave me $125 today to buy a blue silk dress for Aunt Jane's Christmas party. Now, $50 will buy me a nice white dress, a blue belt, and all the little things I need. That leaves $75, which I could use to buy warm clothes, boots, and a waterproof coat for Alice. Do you think Dad would agree? I don't want to ask him because he doesn't know about fabrics or what Alice needs, but could you speak to him for me? Just think, Mom, about all the burdens poor Miss Atkinson has to carry." Mrs. Mason began to say, "It's all for her family," but paused. The rule didn't say, "Family, help each other out." Did she have the right to intervene between Kathy and this first act of kindness the child had ever wanted to do? Could this new interest, beyond blue dresses and frills, fulfill something for her daughter that might otherwise be neglected? Maybe we weren't loving each other as much as we thought in this world. So she kissed Kathy's eager face and said lovingly, "Yes, I'll speak to Dad, darling. I really like your plan, but I won't offer any help. This will be your own good deed." The next day, Kathy shared the new plan with Miss Atkinson. The tired woman's eyes widened in disbelief. She wasn't sure she heard correctly. "Do you mean to say, Kathy, that you'll provide clothes for Alice until she finishes school, with your mom's approval?" "That's exactly what I promised to do," Kathy replied solemnly, mirroring Miss Atkinson's seriousness. "In that case, bless you, you never know the good you're doing." Then Miss Atkinson cried tears of joy, and even Mrs. Mason and Kathy felt emotional. Kathy fled the room. Miss Atkinson made Kathy's muslin dress with love, ensuring it was even more beautiful than any silk. On Christmas Eve, Kathy looked stunning in her white dress, her sunny hair, sparkling eyes, and rosy cheeks making her glow. Her father admired her, trying to sound playful despite the emotion in his voice. "So you couldn't have blue for anything but your sash, and you settled for white clouds for the rest." "That's right. Do you like the clouds?" He kissed her gently. "Yes, I like the clouds, and I think they let some sunshine through for somebody."